Progress.
Hello, and thank you for registering for today's webinar, Beyond the Circular Economy, Framing Biosolids Recycling at the Food, Energy, Water Nexus. I'm Mary Firestone, the Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Biosolids Association, MABA. One piece of information for today is if you have any questions through this presentation, we ask that you please put those in the Q&A. You should be able to view that and bring that up at the bottom of your screen. Just let me know, chat directly with me if you have any issues with that, and we will review those with Bill at the end of his presentation. And that brings me to the introduction of our wonderful speaker today, Mr. William Toffey, Bill Toffey. Bill has over 40 years of experience in municipal wastewater, environmental, and energy management. He is the principal of Effluential Synergies LLC, a sustainable residuals consultancy, and until the beginning of 2022 served as the executive director of the Mid-Atlantic Biosolids Association, a trade group that covers 7 states and supports an industry with 800 biosolids generators and 1,800 biosolids practitioners. For 20 years prior to this position, he managed biosolids operations for the Philadelphia Water Department. During his career, he has authored over 75 papers and presentations to a range of local, national, and international technical audiences, which includes operator training manuals and programs. Over the past 7 years, he has authored 120 monthly biosolids reports to MABA members. Bill graduated from the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Cornell University and has a Master's of Regional Planning degree from the University of Pennsylvania. He is active in national and international professional organizations. And with that, Bill, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Man, that makes me sound really old, and probably because it's good reason for that. Let me go share my screen. So anyway, good morning, and thanks for those who are going to have the fortitude to go through this presentation with me. You may have thought that that as of January 1st that I was tending my garden, singing, going out to the park, relaxing. You'll find out that I've been far from doing that. In fact, you'll probably wonder why you signed up for this after listening to some of the things that I have been dealing with. But I will start with this one line. To anyone out there, I only ask that you care before it's too late. That is a line from Amanda Gorman's poem that she delivered yesterday morning, just about 9:30. She delivered it to the opening of the 77th General Assembly of the United Nations. Their opening program, which was 90 minutes long, was the SDG moment, SDG being the Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations is halfway through a 30-year program to try to accomplish the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And they're far behind. And they thought this would be a good opportunity to sort of kickstart their recommitment to the SDG goals. And they had this program and invited Amanda Gorman, the young woman who was the poet that recited that powerful poem at the inauguration. And she did an equally stunning job at yesterday's poem called An Ode We Owe. And I invite you all to look it up and listen to her presentation. But what I learned also at this 90-minute program was that the United Nations is using water as one of its main focuses in the upcoming couple months. They see it as a topic that helps them tie together many issues they have with the SDGs. And in March of 2023, they have the UN 2023 Water Conference. And leading up to that, they're having next month a stakeholder and a preparatory meeting leading up to that conference. And at the heart of it, what we heard was the circular economy is a term that is widely used when discussing the climate issues and water issues. that was a moment of joy. That program yesterday morning, that was a moment of joy. I saw that come popping into my Instagram feed about the same time I was finishing the evening reading the book called Our Final Warning. It's a fairly recent book by Mark Linus, a British journalist who had written an earlier book called 6 Degrees of Climate Emergency. And in that book, Mark introduces the concept that you only need one chart to really explain the climate issues that we're facing. And this is the Keeling curve. And I learned that you can, by going to @Keeling_curve, Twitter will send you the latest CO2 reading that's taken from the Mauna Loa Observatory. But the purpose of Mark's book, The Final Warning, is that he makes the point that if you look at this curve right in the middle of it, 1987 approximately, that was the year that they first convened at the United Nations, an intergovernmental, a panel of scientists to discuss the climate challenge. And then in 1987, there was the formation of the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, which was considered to be not just the scientists, but also the policymakers from each of the countries. And then there was the Kyoto Protocol in the 90s, and then there was the Paris Agreement in 2015. All along the way, there was lots of pledges made, there was a lot of science applied to it, and a lot of modeling of potential impacts. But what you'll see by looking at this curve is no evidence that any of those pledges or commitments or science has made a difference to the upward trend of CO2. That concentration being the primary driver of climate change occurring in the world today. And the current concentrations are at such that even if fossil emissions were to end today, that the effect on the climate would still be evolving forward in terms of land surface temperatures, ocean temperatures, and the effects of those. So the issue is what happens next. And by the way, you can go to Twitter and right now and sign up for this, 415 parts per million. And for me, being as old as I am, I can tell you that back when I was studying agronomy at Cornell, we knew that 320 was the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. There is absolutely no excuse for us not understanding what the trajectory of our climate is on right now. There have been numerous incredibly detailed scientific reviews of the situation of the climate and what it will mean. For those of you who are real climate geeks, you may have downloaded the 3 working group reports from the 5-year report that was issued out at Glasgow last year. Working group 1 was the physical sciences, working group 2 was the modeling of the impacts, and group 3 was looking at opportunities to mitigate the effects. These are all available. I did go through not the 9,000 pages, but rather the summary for policymakers, the SPMs for each of these 3 reports. And there's nothing comforting about those reports. But thankfully, some of that information has been brought to bear into readable and understandable comment books. Some of these I've listed here. I was reading the Our Final Warning when I saw the offer to listen to Amanda Gorman's poem. But I will tell you that I would recommend that book to you, but I'd also have you look at Uninhabitable Earth. If you're looking for a more philosophical approach, look at An Inconvenient Apocalypse. But I would say that the consensus around this is that we are in an emergency situation when it comes to the future of our climate and the stability of our economy and our societies as a consequence from that. And I think it behooves us all to be well informed. We are among the leaders in the world in our commitment to environmental issues. We are environmental stewards. And I will argue in my presentation today that we have an absolute responsibility to tie in what we do on a daily basis to the issues of climate adaptation and the corollary ecosystem destruction. And as I looked at this, couple points that bear on this challenge that I'm making to you. One is that human beings are not wired mentally to be able to accurately understand or conceive of a future that's different than than the present and the past that we have lived through. Yet that is the task that is of such vital importance to us today, because the future that we're going to be living into and our kids and grandchildren will be living into is going to be far different than the one we understand from today's experience. And there is an interesting philosophical book called What We Owe the Future by William McCaskill, which sort of underscores the importance of our making the effort to understand what is to be done. I also came out with 3 principles that help us to behave today, even if we can't forecast the future. And that is our systems, the ones that our communities, our infrastructure ought to look and be tested by these 3 concepts: robustness, resilience, and reciprocity. I take robustness as being what can withstand the challenges of extreme weather, for instance. Resilience is how can we not only withstand it, but adapt to it and respond to it in a positive way. And reciprocity is slightly different. We have been in a culture of extraction where we expect that fossil fuels and our minerals and our soil are going to continue to produce everything that we ask of it in order to sustain our societies and our economies. This has not been successful and has led to the crisis that we're facing. Instead, we need to be looking at reciprocity. How can we return minerals and nutrients back to the soil, for instance? Understanding nature to be a part of the equation, not just our bottom line. So I look at where we stand as stewards of the environment and ask, how can we make our work real in terms of climate change? And I would take circular economy as being the umbrella that gives us the best access to this conversation. And how can we use our wastewater systems and our biosolids to build resilient communities and restore ecosystems? And how can we connect in our communication, in our work, with the vast number of people who share our commitment to addressing climate change and ecosystem destruction? There is a lot of intelligence and imagination being applied to this topic right now. And it's very different in its philosophy from the way we typically look at the problems that we're facing, whether it's meeting regulatory standards or meeting triple bottom line or meeting cost effectiveness. It is more around how do we generate an environment that will be protective of future populations. The circular economy is an important word for us, term for us to use, because it directly connects to the way we do our business. We are looking for ways of reducing waste and creating valuable products. And we do this with the energy, the carbon, and the nutrients and the water that we are treating. We are, in our cities, the entity that is at the nexus of food, water, and energy. And that is what makes us a key to the circular economy. And this should not be all news to us. This has been a message that has been borne by many others. This is a publication that is put out by the World Bank, Water in Circular Economy and Resilience. They even term it WISER. I like to think wiser. The World Bank drew on work from the International Water Association and the US Water Alliance and others. And it's a great publication with lots of useful perspective and graphics. And I believe this document is going to be fundamental to the upcoming UN 2023 Water Conference in New York next year. And they described our wastewater system, our water infrastructure, in terms of three overlapping circular pathways. And you'll see down in the lower right-hand corner of the third panel on energy pathway, biosolids to energy. This is a way that you can see how our industry is being seen as central to the circular economy. Well, we have researchers in our very own field that have been really out front in describing the importance of our urban wastewater infrastructure for the resilience of cities. And this is mostly not in the context of the United States, which has particular access to economic and food resources and energy resources, but rather to the mega cities that are growing around the globe. And I really urge you to read John Trimmer and Jeremy Guest's publication on the recirculation of human-derived nutrients, because it really frames the issue from a global standpoint. But the Water Environment Federation is out there also. And in fact, I understand, although I have no details, that at the upcoming WEFTEC, whose theme is Create Connections, Transform Tomorrow, that it intends to launch some new programs to, in fact, expand our connectedness as an industry to the larger environmental issues that we're facing. Back in 2018, we had the launch of I thought, a really inspired effort called the Renew Water Project, in which they came up with metrics to describe the degree to which our wastewater industry provides resources that could be used in communities. And when I checked in with Patrick Doobie, he assured me that this will be, in fact, an ongoing project of the Water Environment Federation, because in fact, the objective of transforming our waste products into valuable resources for the community really does harmonize with the large environmental issues. I also underscore the U.S. Water Alliance and its net zero program. It's not just net zero in terms of electricity use, like bringing down our electricity bills to zero from producing electricity at the plant. It's actually goes as far as net zero emissions and as a zero carbon footprint, which is a much more aggressive kind of goal, and one which can inspire a lot of creativity. We're already doing so much in this field already, and it's very easy for us to look at what we're doing as sort of pat ourselves on the back and say, look, we're already doing some great work here. But unless people know about it, unless we connect ourselves to a larger community, we won't get the credit for it, nor will we understand the full importance of what we're doing. I just highlight a few of the projects we have here where we do some really extreme processing of food waste along with sewage sludge in our plants, or that we recover phosphorus in a way that allows it to be sold as a fertilizer, or that we are recovering energy from our treatment system. I would also like to, highlight and underscore projects that I've been working on, along with many others in the biosolids. And certainly, if you have not yet visited the biosolidsdata.org website and seen the amazing compilation of statistics and information on biosolids treatment and use in the United States, please do so. Please do so. Not only that, but share it with others. It demonstrates that we have, in fact, been recovering each year about 3 million tons on a dry basis of biosolids for use in our soils around our cities, in our farms. And I undertook, as part of this, an effort to data mine the EPA's ECHO reports from the biosolids reports that folks submit, to find out about 150 public agencies and some private companies that are distributing products to homeowners and landscapers derived from biosolids. And just to get a sense of how widespread it is, how popular it is, and also it's not just the big cities on the coast that are doing it. There's communities around the country that are doing this, recycling the biosolids for community use. I am a particular fan of compost, as some of you may know. For 20 years, I tried to make composting work in Philadelphia, even though having a facility that was underneath the main entrance to the city was not a prescription for success. However, compost has been a big success across the country, and not only with big facilities out on the East Coast and West Coast or in Chicago, but also small cities across the country. But I'd also like to call out those that are such as Listec, which has a really fine liquid biosolids program that really meets the needs of the farmers. Because in these cases, we're making products that are designed to meet the needs of people who are looking to improve their soil. It's an important part of meeting the test of the circular economy. And we're doing this in some of the long-standing programs, such as the Tegro out in Tacoma. Chicago has run out of its compost for the year. And Blue Drop is certainly one of my favorite. DC water and its thermal hydrolysis and digestion creates a product that they're able to refine into one that does have super urban agricultural opportunities, green infrastructure applications, heat island mitigation, a lot of those actions that are necessary to deal with climate resilience. These are products that are meeting that need. Blue Drop is the agents, the 2 or 3 folks who are actually out in the field selling the DC Water's Bloom product. But compost and biosolids for urban use are not the only applications that are potential for bioproducts from biosolids. And here's a few of the ideas where fermentation byproducts can produce polymers, where there's products could be produced from algae that's grown in wastewater. But among the most critical objectives in meeting the test of circular economy is the way we derive energy from our biosolids or the solids, and the way we manage energy within our wastewater plants. That World Bank publication focused one of its cases on the Aarhus, Denmark wastewater plant that produces above and beyond its own energy needs, about 50% more energy than that it needs. And that is an example of not only self-sufficiency, but self-sufficiency plus. We have some of our own examples in the United States, of course, very aggressive attention to energy self-sufficiency. East Bay mud comes to mind, and it's been so for the last decade. And when it comes to examples of creative energy management, I like to use our local example here in the Mid-Atlantic region of Landis Sewerage Authority in Vineland, New Jersey. They have a little windmill, they have a solar farm field, they have their food waste acceptance facility and the digesters that produce biogas for cogeneration. Just a great place to see the entire range of opportunities when it looks at energy self-sufficiency. One of the interesting things I discovered as I was going down the rat hole of looking at the circular economy was that it's very easy for us to underestimate the range of disciplines that are looking at the related science of energy, water, nutrient, carbon flows in urban areas. I bring this up because it was very hard for me to distract myself from trying to understand what urban metabolism was, or what material flow analysis might be if you were to apply that to wastewater plants. And what is harvesting of urban resources mean in terms of wastewater? We are already deploying many of these technologies. We are already accomplishing a certain amount of urban metabolism proof of how it works in our systems. It's just that we do not we do not tie ourselves into the researchers. As a consequence, we often do not get the credit or even the acknowledgement that our programs are accomplishing these. Ecosystem services is also one of those terms of art which we are hoping to expand our connection to. And you'll see at the top there a paper that Sally Brown and I co-authored. But it's only one of a large number of papers that are looking at ecosystem services as the umbrella terminology for how we need to be managing our flow of water, energy, and carbon and nutrients. And so when I looked at some of this literature, I found that there were some really interesting new ideas in the that we could be drawing upon. There is a lot of interest in these other fields, and urine diversion as one example of how to more directly capture the resources in our human waste. There's a lot of interest in algae treatment at wastewater plants. Having visited Chicago a number of years ago, I knew that they were experimenting with algae treatment to reduce phosphorus in their effluent. And I learned by calling them this past week that in fact they are in another phase of experimentation. The first one dealt with the fact that the phosphorus concentrations in their wastewater were pretty low and weren't really successful. There's also a lot of interest in decentralization of urban wastewater systems, which may not be a bad idea if in the future our treatment plants are become more vulnerable to storm surges and flooding. The idea is to replace or place within our wastewater shed this decentralized small-scale treatment facilities that can return water, energy, and solids for use in the communities. The problem is the solids is still the weak part, and we probably will always have some sort of centralized treatment systems supporting them. I was also interested in the terms of art of agroecology and bioprocesses. I pulled out the term of art, bioregenerative life support systems. As far as I'm concerned, that is biosolids recycling. So there was also before I skip over it, a call for trying to extract nitrogen from our wastewater before being compelled to convert it to nitrogen gas, capture the ammonia directly from the wastewater rather than having it become part of the treatment system. Because ammonia has a very large carbon footprint and is the form of nitrogen of most value in farming. A lot of the circular economy comes down to a matter of soil health, and we have two things going on simultaneously. First of all, there is the sort of the larger recognition in the field of environmental science that fossil fuels have transformed the way we conduct agriculture, and those that have borne the negative impacts of that are largely the soil and the ecosystems in and around our farmlands. And that returning health to the soil is a fundamental requirement of responding to climate change and to ecological destruction. So the question to us is, how can we deploy our biosolids to restore soil health? And this is a matter of great interest, not only in the agronomy side, but also in the climate side. And on the lower left side, I highlight the work of Jim Ippolito, who has been one of the primary leaders in our understanding of the relationship between biosolids use and the health of the soil. And in fact, I just today learned that the latest issue of CSA News, that's the popular publication of the crop, soil, and agronomy societies, has a real feature on sewage sludge, from sewage sludge to biosolids, the title of that article. So please look for it, because it draws upon Jim's work in long-term biosolids applications. But the climate the climate activists and the climate scientists are looking to soil as a solution to the excessive carbon dioxide emissions. And increasingly, nature-based solutions for carbon management is seen as one of the easy steps to make a difference in our the ability to sequester carbon. I find it amazing that anybody thinks it's easy, but there is the publication here on nature-based solutions in carbon markets really points to an opportunity to capture money in the area of corporations and foundations, non-governmental organizations interested in making a difference in carbon emissions by employing those funds in investments that improve soil health and improve biomass. And toward that end, the area of voluntary carbon management has developed a set of protocols for how you would get that investment money deployed. We have 3 that are particularly active in our country: the American Carbon Registry, VERRA, VERRA, and the Carbon Action Reserve, which is primarily in California. Each of these groups have come up with mechanisms, protocols for verifying that carbon that comes from growing plants, improving soil quality, changing agricultural practices, growing, reforesting abandoned lands, that these projects, in fact, do create a net carbon reduction, and therefore the investments in those can be justified. In fact, we have in Pennsylvania a group called the Earth Foundation, Restore the Earth Foundation, that is investing millions of dollars in a project in the South to reforest wetlands down there. And some of the intelligence behind that, the developers behind that, are looking at projects that might be suitable for the Mid-Atlantic region. And one of my candidates for that is one of our MABA members, American Green, who has been doing mine reclamation work for 15, 20 years, and has some great examples of the long-term benefits of improving the soil carbon in formerly coal mine areas. But Biosolids is not an easy sell in this voluntary carbon market. My original excitement around the voluntary carbon market was the thought that millions of dollars might be available to help us with our biosolids recycling programs. But the closer we look at the science of carbon and soil interactions, the harder it is to understand how the biosolids per se has carbon that can create a long-term presence in the soil and be a reliable investment for those who are investing in the voluntary carbon market. Instead, we have the potential benefits of carbon biosolids in producing biomass that can be produced as a bioenergy source and in a long-term afforestation of abandoned mines. The other thing we have is a big concept that's in the field of climate adaptation and carbon sequestration, BECCS, bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. There's actually a project in Pennsylvania that is in its early stages of formulation, in which they intend to capture carbon dioxide and pump it into deep mines and geological structures. But the carbon dioxide in this proposal will come from bioenergy crops, so you get a double benefit. Not sure whether BECCS is going to survive the test of finances and the test of science, but it's a concept that we might want to keep track of. I'd also like to sort of spend a few minutes on the concept of the time scale in which we do our work. If you were to Google or do a Wikipedia on long-termism, you'll find that there's a large body of work being produced to try to understand what are the responsibilities, arguably, of people living today to take actions that would provide an environment to the future, for future generations to live into. That we enjoy today the fruits of a lot of human energy, activity and energy in preparing our productive capacity, our food systems, our standard of living, and our health. What are we doing today to make sure that going forward, future generations will enjoy the same thing? That's the concept of long-termism. I don't see things are going in a very hopeful direction in that. In fact, just the opposite. So I guess that's why the concept of long-termism really does harmonize with me, is that what can we be doing today in our wastewater infrastructure that would in fact reflect a commitment to many generations out, not just the next year budget. And it's hard. This middle article on estimating the social cost of carbon does argue that the value given today to the sequestration of a ton of carbon dioxide equivalents is very, very low. It's maybe $20 a ton. But that the true cost, if all aspects of climate change were to be factored in, is probably closer to $200 a ton of carbon dioxide equivalent. What would life be like? What would our lives be like if in fact we were all paying the true cost of carbon, true social cost of carbon? Would that not mean that our electricity prices and our liquid fuel prices for transportation be something on the order of 10 times what they are today? What would our planning for our wastewater systems be like if we were to anticipate that the future economy, the future governance of carbon dioxide were to include the full cost of carbon? And what might that do for the decisions we make on the kind of infrastructure we have? How could they be more resilient? How could they manage in a system where the price of energy is 10 times what it is today? So I challenge us all to not just look at how we have understood the issues of today from the standpoint of workable technology, the cost of energy, the cost of equipment. What would it be like if we were facing an entirely different set of circumstances, and ones that insisted that we take a look at long-term consequences and risks? And one of those risks is, in fact, sea level rise. I don't know if am I the only one who waits for every word about how the Antarctic is melting, or how the Thwaites glacier is being undermined, or how East Antarctica is not the stable glacier that we thought it was, and how, all told, over the next generation or two, we may see sea level rise 3 meters or more, and fairly rapidly? What would that do to our wastewater facilities? On a more conventional standpoint, we have a fairly typical report, the sea level rise impacts on wastewater treatment from several years ago. But I wonder if anybody's working on revising those numbers to reflect some of the risks going forward of a sudden rise of sea level. In almost every other domain of our lives, we don't look at the positive tail of the distribution of risks. We look at the impactful part of the distribution of risks, and we tend not to look at the bad news side of our range of risks. And that's one reason why, if you read those books that I was introducing at the front, you'll begin to see, especially in the book, our final warning, he does in fact look at how distinctly different the possible impacts of climate change are when you look at the tail of risks out in the far side of the curve of potential temperature changes. But one of the interesting things is that opportunities for distributed electric generation seems to me to be one of the takeaways that I think is important for our industry to glom onto, because every single wastewater plant could in fact be working to engage in the opportunity to be self-sufficient as one goal, but in fact become a source of distributed energy in the community. I will also sort of raise the issue of long-termism in this field of how do we evaluate technologies that are different from the ones that we have today. I'm particularly interested in how we look at the thermal conversion technologies that are knocking on our doors, you might say. An incredibly diverse and engaged set of innovators are out there. Just in our Mid-Atlantic region, which I think is probably only second to California in the number of different actors who are at play here. We are very close to having some reference facilities that will be the basis of future planning. And so I'm sure we'll all be spending our time at this. I call attention to a couple of them. I was in touch with Aries Clean Technologies, which has been for several years now, the one that we've been looking to have to visit in Linden, New Jersey. They assured me that they're completely committed to making that facility work after they get past a few stumbling blocks. But we have some other interesting ones underway. We have Bioforce Tech from the West Coast looking to install an Ephrata. Somax Circular is under construction at Phoenixville with a hydrothermal carbonization, I believe it is. Earth Care, which was originally Coltech, is primarily a gasification system for manures, but they have a facility that is near getting its permits in central Pennsylvania that would also take in biosolids. Then up in Schenectady, we have the pyrolysis system, the BioWaste Pyrolysis Solutions is building. The reason I bring these up is that they do try to check a couple of the boxes that are important to us. They're checking the box on producing a product, a char or an ash that can be recycled. They're also helping us deal with some of the environmental issues or the concerns around micropollutants, unregulated organic contaminants, PFAS, microplastics, and such. And perhaps these are, elements in our biosolids that make it difficult for us to achieve direct recycling, and maybe we need a thermal conversion before. But having gone to my very first biosolids conference 35 years ago, I think, or maybe 32 years ago in Los Angeles, where I heard about oil from sludge, and I heard about pyrolysis in Australia, I know that a lot of projects have just had a real tough time showing their viability when they're in the domain of thermal conversion. So I'm hopeful, but time will tell. But I would like to sort of wind up my presentation with the concept of how do we connect our biosolids work, which is genuinely already in the space of a circular economy, already helping with soil health, already helping to recycle carbon, energy, nutrients, and water. How do we connect this to climate change as the global crisis that is facing the world? And how can WRRS, how can the water resource recovery facilities themselves be recognized as a core community infrastructure dealing and helping to solve these challenges? One of the factors that I came up with was that most of the information about climate change, about the potential risks, about the forecasts for temperature changes, about the extreme weather, is almost impenetrable for even the well-prepared mind, like mine. But it's almost it's completely impenetrable to most citizens in our country. You're not going to get most people in our communities to take concerted effort to end their use of gasoline and convert to solar panels for their home energy. It's just too far a step. It's just too unimaginable. However, people can understand urban gardens. They do understand, or conceptually understand, the benefits of trees for cooling their environment. And so I did a little exercise. Some of you may know my son works for Instagram, so he helped me with this. If you look at the number of posts at Instagram, what are people interested in? What is capturing their imagination? What do they look for information on? Climate change, urban farming, and circular economy have a lot of posts. Biosolids? No. Even PFAS. Not too many people know what PFAS are. So when I look at this, and I look at the publications that are out there that are calling for urban agriculture and as a strategy for building resilience, when I look at recovery of resources in urban areas as a strategy for climate change, what I hear is that we in the biosolids business need to always and consistently be messaging out our work in the terms of what people are interested in. That's climate change, urban farming, and the circular economy. How can we always be connecting our programs with the results of that are meaningful at the local level today? And that in connecting that a planting, a revegetation of a vacant lot with trees, connecting that to local temperatures, connecting that to the resilience that is necessary to deal with coming extremes in temperature, connecting that urban forest to the biosolids in the community that are being applied to the soil to build soil health. We start to have a messaging which is meaningful to the community, and which allows us to be speaking about what wastewater treatment means to the community, what biosolids means to soil health, and what soil health means to the climate. We're able to be a source of that kind of information that builds understanding of how local actions can be positively taken to deal with climate change. So it is so gratifying that to see how the Water Environment Federation particularly has become open to this new messaging. And kudos to Maile Lona Butura for having pushed through some of the early resistance on her Year of Poo, 2022, the Year of Poo. And congratulations on the Friday Flush program, interviews with people who are committed to resource recovery from wastewater. And I also want to underscore the value of working with journalists in our field who have become interested and in the work that we do. As I had on the page before, there is the solutions journalism is a real thing. Those are journalists who want to identify a problem that folks are out there trying to solve, and focus on the people and that are doing the adventurous work to solve real problems. And if you haven't bought Lena Zelkovich's book, The Other Dark Matter, please do. She has provided us some wonderful conference presentations, and her book does help to explain that we do not need to be tied to a messaging that has wastewater yucky. And I just learned this past week from one of my colleagues, Kendall Christensen, that there's a new book out there called Flush, The Remarkable Science of an Unlikely Treasure. And to have the New York Times Book Review discuss the power of poop is a beautiful thing. And we do need to also acknowledge the important work done out in Northwest Biosolids with understanding the way that messages need to be framed in order to catch public attention to biosolids in a positive way. So let me end up by saying that we have a product, we have programs that can be offered into the circular economy, and in a meaningful way, an imaginable way, an understandable way, and that is creating heat islands to protect people from extreme heats. It's products for managing stormwater and storm runoff in the green infrastructure. Products that can be used to support local agriculture, help people with food self-sufficiency. And some of this is driven right now by issues of environmental justice and poverty in the cities, people without resources. But if we can forecast out in the future, if we understand what we're facing with the changes of climate and temperature, it's not just going to be the folks who have resource limits in the city. It's going to be all of us. We'll be trying to find new ways of managing our access to safe environments. So we are the experts in the area of wastewater treatment, but we're also the people who are for most communities, the best folks around in the area of environmental stewardship, in managing infrastructure that is protective of the environment and provides products that can be used in the community to help people deal with environmental issues. So that's why I titled this presentation Beyond the Circular Economy, because biosolids, in fact, deals with a whole lot of opportunities to serve. So with that, I will end my presentation. I see we have a few minutes left for conversation and chat. I did skip over some of the details I was going to give because I was afraid I was going to run out of time. So Mary, did anybody have anything they wanted to add or question?
I don't see any questions.
Okay. Whoa.
Anyone has any questions, you can pop those into the Q&A or the chat at the bottom. Raise your hand. Oh, it appears we do have a question. Hold on. We just read a comment, Bill, that your mention of long-termism is very interesting.
Oh, it's also perhaps the most difficult thing for people to do. One of the things that I realized was that in looking back at what people thought today would be, it was almost completely entirely wrong. Nobody could effectively predict the future. That's why we have to sort of look at what are the tools available today that would enable those that come after us to have the most opportunities to deal with the future, deal with the presence that they find. There was also one thing that I was going to jump in and say, you must see that magazine article, and I guess Mary, you may be sending it out to some of the MABA members, the article in CSA News from sewage sludge to biosolids. Some of our very important researchers are quoted in there. Nick Basta, Jim Ippolito, Sally Brown, Ned Beecher's in there. But Sally says something at the very end, which I thought is worth repeating. She says, soil is the foundation of life, but this meaning biosolids, is the tool to make soil healthier. And I like to think that that's the kind of messages that we would always be leading with when we are talking about the programs that we are managing.
We do have a couple of questions, Bill. So we have the question regarding your last 3 points, the mitigation of the heat islands, management of storms and droughts, and sustaining local food production. They're asking if you could provide talking points to connect biosolids to those issues specifically.
Mm-hmm. The first place I would go to answer that is to the Blue Drops website, where they talk about how Bloom can be worked into projects in the local community. In the past, most of the biosolids compost programs that I was aware of really had product information sheets that tied them into soil blends and applications in the field that accomplished the improvement in soil health, the improvement, the blends that were optimal for growing urban trees. And so I think in this score there's a lot of stuff out there, and it might be useful for us to go and try to compile some of those for the different products we have.
I agree. MABA initiative.
Yes,
Yeah,
something for me to do in my retirement years, right, Mary?
exactly. We have one more question. It's, do you see a threat for agricultural reuse of biosolids on food crops because of PFAS and other forever chemical content? Is planning to reuse biosolids as soil amendment for fiber crops a feasible pivot?
It's a great question. My personal reaction is that PFAS is a well overblown uh, distraction from biosolids recycling. That the levels of PFAS in the biosolids are de minimis and almost without effect in the environment. But that said, doesn't mean that there will not be a consequence to PFAS occurring in biosolids, and that the decision to use it in fiber crops or biomass production or in restoration of forests makes a whole lot of sense, and in some respects is the highest, in my mind, the highest and best use. In part because we also have an issue around phosphorus, and almost all the agricultural soils in easy reach of coastal cities in the United States are soils that are already pretty high in phosphorus, at least on the East Coast, and that finding options where the soils are low in phosphorus is a great option. And while there's no programs out there yet that the carbon in biosolids has been valued for as a carbon source under the voluntary carbon markets, it doesn't mean it won't be in the future. We are just not there yet. We would love to hope that, in fact, NEBRA has the carbon and carbon and residuals. Oh, I've lost the name of the committee. Janine would be able to tell me. It's the one that we're looking at how we can create a market for the biosolids carbon in the voluntary carbon market field. And that committee is looking for good case studies where we can find people willing to take on projects where biosolids is one of the components in a larger project that is seeking support, funding, investment in the voluntary carbon markets for biomass or afforestation. It's something ahead.
We do have another question then. This person says, I work for a large-scale biosolids composter. With your experience in the wastewater treatment arena, what are the key areas to focus on to gain support from municipalities that result in real implementation steps? There seems to be recognition among stakeholders, but an inability to come together and advocate for establishing infrastructure.
Oh, man. My general experience in this is that the results show themselves. That where facilities have been built that make compost, and the compost has been used locally in meaningful projects, including recreational fields, including reclaiming urban landscapes, that the results are just so compelling that people will take whatever risks are left in their mind associated with biosolids will be answered, at least giving it a chance. I think we continue to need to have an ongoing presentation of success stories in our field that people can then use and draw and say, it's not just about us. You know, Laramie, Wyoming is doing it. Los Angeles is doing it. You know, we can point to communities throughout the country that are happy with the composting choices or with the technology that they've had, and it's contributing meaningfully to the community. So it's a part of being able to be confident and then have the stories that meet the interests of your citizens.
Great.
Just don't make a lot of odors. No matter where you are, if you have a stinky compost, it's never going to sell. Stop the odors.
All right, thank you, Bill. I think that is the end of our questions. So I want to thank you for this presentation. It's very informative and gave a lot for consideration. And I want to thank everyone who attended today. As I said at the beginning, there will be a recording of this, and I will share it with those who were registered in the coming days. So please stay tuned to MABA communications about things in the region and outside of the region as well. And our next webinar will be on November 8th. So there will be more information about that coming soon. All right, so thank you very much, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.